Okay, back to chapter 3 of Horrid Henry's Underpants, and this one is Horrid Henry's sick day. Achoo, achoo! Are you all right, Peter? Asked Mum. Peter coughed, choked and spluttered. I'm okay, he gasped. Are you sure? Said Dad. You don't look very well. It's nothing, said Perfect Peter, coughing. Mum felt Peter's sweaty brow. You've got a temperature, said Mum. I think you'd better stay home from school today. But I don't want to miss school, said Peter. Go back to bed, said Mum. But I want to go to school, wailed Peter. I'm sure I'll be... Peter's pale, sweaty face turned green. He dashed upstairs to the loo. Mum ran after him. Bleh! The horrible sound of vomiting filled the house. Horrid Henry stopped eating his toast. Peter, stay at home. Peter, miss school. Peter lays about watching TV while he, Henry, had to suffer a long, hard day with Miss Battleaxe. No way, he was sick. Hadn't he coughed twice this morning? And he had definitely sneezed last night. Now that he thought about it, he could feel those flu germs evading. Yup, there they were, marching down his throat. Stomp, 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 marched the germs. Mercy, shrieked his throat. Ha ha ha, gloated the germs. Horrid Henry thought about those spelling words he hadn't learnt, the map he hadn't finished colouring, the book report he hadn't done. Ow, his throat hurt. Ooh, his tummy hurt. Ooh, his head hurt. Yippee! He was sick. So what would it be? Maths or mutant max? Reading or relaxing? Commas or comics? Tests or TV? Thought Horrid Henry. Hard choice. Dad continued reading the paper. Cough, 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 cough. Are you all right, Henry? Asked Dad, without looking up. No, gasped Henry. I'm sick too. I can't go to school. Slowly, Dad put down his newspaper. You don't look ill, Henry, said Dad. But I am, whimpered Horrid Henry. He clutched his throat. My throat really hurts, he moaned. Then he had added a few coughs just in case. I feel weak, he groaned. Everything aches. Dad sighed. All right, you can stay home, he said. Yes, thought Horrid Henry. He was amazed. It usually took much more moaning and groaning before his mean, horrible parents decided he was sick enough to miss a day off school. But no playing on the computer, said Dad. If you're sick, you have to lie down. Horrid Henry was outraged. But it makes me feel better to play on the computer, he protested. If you're well enough to play on the computer, you're well enough to go to school, said Dad. Rats. Oh well, thought Horrid Henry. He'd get his duvet, lie on the sofa and watch loads of TV instead. Then Mum would bring him cold drinks, lunch on a tray, maybe even ice cream. It was always such a waste when you were too sick to enjoy being sick, thought Horrid Henry happily. He could hear Mum and Dad arguing upstairs. I need to go to work, said Mum. I need to go to work, said Dad. I stayed home last time, said Mum. No, you didn't, I did, said Dad. Are you sure? Said Mum. Yeah, said Dad. Are you sure you're sure? Said Mum. Horrid Henry could hardly believe his ears. Imagine arguing over who got to stay home. When he was grown up, he was going to stay home full time, testing computer games for millions of pounds a week. He bounced into the sitting room, then he stopped bouncing. A horrible, ugly, snotty creature was stretched out under a duvet in the comfy black chair. Horrid Henry glanced at the TV. A dreadful assortment of wobbling creatures were dancing and prancing. Tra-la-la-la-la, we live at Nellie's, we've got big bellies, we eat purple jellies at Nellie's nursery. Horrid Henry sat down on the sofa. I want to watch Robot Rebels, said Henry. Well, I'm watching Nellie's nursery, said Peter, sniffing. Stop sniffing, said Henry. I can't help it, my nose is running, said Peter. I'm sicker than you and I'm not sniffing, said Henry. I'm sicker than you, said Peter. Faker, faker. Liar, liar. Mum, shrieked Henry and Peter. Mum came into the room carrying a tray of cold drinks and two thermometers. Henry's being mean to me, whined Peter. Peter's being mean to me, whined Henry. If you're well enough to fight, you're well enough to go to school, Henry, said Mum, glaring at him. I wasn't fighting, Peter was, said Henry. Henry was, said Peter, coughing. Henry coughed louder. Peter groaned. Henry groaned louder. Moaned Peter. Moaned Henry. It's not fair. I want to watch Robot Rebels. I want to watch Nellie's Nursery, whimpered Peter. Peter would choose what to watch because he's the sickest, said Mum. Peter, sicker than he was, as if, well, no way was Henry's sick day going to be ruined by my horrible brother. I'm the sickest, Mum, protested Henry. I just don't complain so much. Mum looked tired. She popped one thermometer into Henry's mouth and the other into Peter's. I'll be back in 5 minutes to check them, she said, and I don't want to hear another peep from either of you, she added, leaving the room. Horrid Henry lay back on the sofa with the thermometer in his mouth. He felt terrible. He touched his forehead. He was burning. His temperature must be 105. I bet my temperature is so high the thermometer won't even have enough numbers, thought Henry. Just wait till Mum saw how ill he was. Then she'd be sorry she'd been so mean. Perfect Peter started groaning. I'm going to be sick, he gasped, taking the thermometer from his mouth and running from the room. The moment Peter left, Henry leapt up from the sofa and checked Peter's thermometer. 101 degrees. Oh no, Peter had a temperature. Now Peter would start getting all the attention. Mum would make Henry fetch and carry for him. Peter might even get extra ice cream. Something had to be done. Quickly, Henry plunged Peter's thermometer into the glass of iced water. Beep, beep. Hurried Henry took out his own thermometer. It read 98.6. Normal. Normal. His temperature was normal. That was impossible. How could his temperature be normal when he was so ill? If Mum saw that normal temperature, she'd have him dressed for school in 3 seconds. Obviously, there was something wrong with this stupid thermometer. Horrid Henry held it to the light bulb, just to warm it up a little, he thought. Clump, clump, yikes, Mum's coming back. Quickly, Henry yanked Peter's thermometer out of the iced water and replaced it in his own in his mouth. Ow, it was hot. Let's see if you have a temperature, said Mum. She took the thermometer out of Henry's mouth. 127 degrees, she shrieked. Oops. The thermometer must be broken, mumbled Henry. But I still have a temperature. I'm boiling. Said Mum, feeling Henry's forehead. Peter came back into the sitting room slowly. His face was ashen. Check my temperature, Mum, said Peter. He lay back weakly on the pillows. Mum checked Peter's thermometer. 57 degrees, she shrieked. Oops, thought horrid Henry. That one must be broken too, said Henry. He decided to change the subject fast. Mum, could you open the curtains, please? Said Henry. But I want them closed, said Peter. Open! Closed! We'll leave them closed, said Mum. Peter sneezed. Mum, said Henry. Peter's got snot all over me. Mum, wailed Peter. Henry's smelly. Horrid Henry glared at Peter. Perfect Peter glared at Henry. Henry whistled. Peter hummed. Henry's whistling. Peter's humming. Mum, they screamed. Make him stop. That's enough, shouted Mum. Go to your bedrooms, both of you. Henry and Peter heaved their heavy bones upstairs to their rooms. It's all your fault, said Henry. It's yours, said Peter. The front door opened. Dad came in and he looked pale. I'm not feeling well, said Dad. I'm going to bed. Horrid Henry was bored. Horrid Henry was fed up. What was the point of being sick if you couldn't watch TV and you couldn't play on the computer? I'm hungry, complained Horrid Henry. I'm thirsty, complained Perfect Peter. I'm achy, complained Dad. My bed's too hot, moaned Horrid Henry. My bed's too cold, moaned Perfect Peter. My bed's too hot and too cold, moaned Dad. Mum ran up the stairs. Mum ran down the stairs. Ice cream, shouted Horrid Henry. Hot water bottle, shouted Perfect Peter. More pillows, shouted Dad. Mum walked up the stairs. Mum walked down the stairs. Toast, shouted Henry. Tissues, croaked Peter. Tea, gasped Dad. Can you wait a minute? Said Mum. I need to sit down. No, shouted Henry, Peter and Dad. Oh, all right, said Mum. She plodded up the stairs, she plodded down the stairs. My head is hurting, my throat is hurting, my stomach is hurting. Mum trudged up the stairs, Mum trudged down the stairs. Crisps, shrieked Henry. Throat lozenge, croaked Peter. Hanky, wheezed Dad. Mum staggered up the stairs, Mum staggered down the stairs. Then Horrid Henry saw the time, 3:30. School was finished. The weekend was here. It was amazing, thought Horrid Henry. How much better he suddenly felt. Horrid Henry threw off his duvet and leapt out of bed. Mum, he shouted, I'm feeling much better. Can I go and play on the computer now? Mum staggered into his room. Thank goodness you're better, Henry, she whispered. I feel terrible. I'm going to bed. Could you bring me a cup of tea? What? I'm busy, snapped Henry. Mum glared at him. All right, said Henry grudgingly. Why couldn't Mum get her own tea? She had legs, didn't she? Horrid Henry escaped into the sitting room. He sat down at the computer and loaded Intergalactic Robot Rebellion. This time it's personal. Bliss. He'd zap some robots, then have a go at Snake Master's revenge. Henry? Gasped Mum. Where's my tea? Henry, rasped Dad. Bring me a drink of water. Henry, whimpered Peter. Bring me an extra blanket. Horrid Henry scowled. Honestly, how was he meant to concentrate with all these interruptions? Tea, water, blankets. Get it yourself, he howled. What was he, a servant? Henry, spluttered Dad. Come up here a minute. Slowly, Horrid Henry got to his feet. He looked longingly at the flashing screen. But what choice did he have? I'm sick too, shrieked Horrid Henry. I'm going back to bed. And that's the end of that chapter.